Welcome to the IPE Team Simulation. Just real quick, this time schedule is going to be roughly 1 hour and no longer than 2 hours long, and we're going to start by introducing ourselves. Okay, so I'll start off. I'm the operations manager. I'm Juan Rodriguez, the operations manager. It is my role as the operations manager to oversee the operations of the food recovery program and assist with everybody else's jobs. I was assigned the sections to answer the questions of why we are doing this in the organization and lay out an organizational structure. Okay. Devin, if you can go ahead and say your role.
Yeah, I'm Devin Kepler. In real life, I'm a health systems management policy track. In the simulation, I'm the public health coordinator, and I'm here to lend the expertise and resources of the health department to the food recovery program, which are pretty broad. So I as well as Cynda, sorry, feel like there's a lot of overlap in what I laid out, which I suppose we'll flesh out when we get into the details. But I'm also responsible for public relations and fundraising.
Perfect. Gilbert?
Yes, I'm Gilbert Frew, and I'll be acting as a transport coordinator for this purpose of this exercise. So my role is going to be to coordinate pick-up and drop-off of food from restaurants, farms, and grocery stores to the homeless center. And I'll also help coordinate and oversee the volunteers who will be transporting the food. And I'll also be working with the food handling and training manager to ensure that we have sufficient training and capacity.
Thank you. Jacqueline?
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Merz, and I am the director of the homeless shelter. So my job is to help brainstorm ways to get the homeless individuals to participate in the food recovery program. And I'm also in charge of recruitment of the volunteers and managing them as well.
Thank you. Cynda?
I'm Cynda Basch, food safety inspector. And so I'm to ensure that all parties are following the safety regulations concerning food and collaborate and advise the rest of you.
Thank you. Amanda?
My name is Amanda Slavik. I'm the food producer representative. My role is to represent the establishments where food will be recovered and working with transportation coordinator and the food and handling and training manager. And I'm assigned donated food where, what, and when we'll get it.
Thank you. Last but not least, or last, Selena.
Hello, everyone. I'm the food handling and training manager. I train volunteer staff on how to properly do the food recovery. I also schedule volunteer and I coordinate with the transport coordinator, food producer representative, and operations manager.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen and show the Google Doc we created.
Just like a logistics question on navigating this Google Doc. If I scroll, does it scroll on your guys' screen too?
No.
Okay, I didn't want to be like messing with what you guys were seeing. Okay.
Oh. Are you guys looking at my Google Docs screen?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to zoom in there. Okay, so real quick, we're going to just go over these few pages. Starting out with my proposal, or I guess what I was set to do was to write up a summary and introduction, pretty much asking the question why we are doing this. So what I started off with was kind of explaining the amount of homeless people that would spend their time at a homeless shelter each night in Colorado. And I also kind of geared this towards the metropolitan area of Denver. I was thinking maybe that would be a good focus for us to do. And then I kind of get into what those services offer at this homeless shelter, which is manage and maintain our right here, sustain full capacity tonight, which we accommodate a small fraction of those. The establishment provides 3 meals a day, early and afternoon refreshments, hygiene supplies, and housing and stuff like that as a way of what do we offer. And then it kind of breaks into this is a growing homeless shelter or its tracks. And what we want to do is to provide or to help or find a way to gain access to food wastage and start up a recovery, food recovery program. And so I just kind of give a little statistics about food recovery or numbers about food recovery and wastage in America and how we can tap into that. Is that an okay overview of this? Did you guys want to read this word for word?
Scanning it looks really comprehensive and well done. I think something that stands out to me is we got to name our homeless shelter.
Yes, and I did that because I wanted to give it more personal flair off of us. If anybody had any creative ideas for that, we were just given, we are working with a homeless shelter.
So I think it looks awesome, and I think it's a great idea. I just will say that I did not have the vision that our food recovery program was specifically associated with a homeless shelter.
Okay.
I thought about just the nuts and bolts of the food recovery, and then it could be donated or like a food share, a pantry type of situation more where people would come and pick it up.
Okay.
And at least the food safety regulations that I reviewed, I pretty much left out the serving of food.
Okay.
So I'll just throw that out there.
I think it is explicitly, there's only like one sentence that indicates this, but it is like our direction is explicitly to serve food at a homeless shelter.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. On the overview of the directions document, I think the first sentence says that we are a food recovery program for a local homeless shelter. So I think it's better for us to focus on the homeless shelter. I don't know if everybody else did. I did, with the knowledge of the homeless shelter as the target. So I don't know if everybody else did that.
Yeah, and Cynda, I think everything that you've researched and written, I suspect will still apply in a similar fashion. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I just might need to add a couple things.
And that'll be fine. We could definitely do that. Because I also envision this as focusing on a local homeless shelter, but then potentially, what happens when we have too much in stock? How could we expand our services and, give that to other homeless shelters or other areas that need food? So, because that's something we can also think about. So.
Right.
So are you guys okay with this? Any major standouts other than naming the homeless shelter?
Looks good.
Okay. So then what I kind of did, so this is where we'll get into more of how this structure would work. I have this nice little picture here that I kind of just made real fast. I don't know if I can move it. I do not know how to move it, but I'll leave it as this. I was trying to zoom into it. I'll zoom into it like this. If you can still see my screen. So the idea was we kind of create this team, and that team is to help lower the food wastage in America and also find a food recovery program, right, through local grocers, bakeries, or any other food source, and then also the local farms for fresh produce, to create a balanced nutrition and to provide that to our homeless shelter, right? And then in support of that, we're going to need proper food inspection, training of our volunteers, and then the correct transportation. So I kind of just put those all in there. So that's kind of what this plan overlooks. And so I pretty much give a brief overview of what the purpose of this plan is for, the organizational structure. Then I talk about establishing the team, who those consist of. Food storage, just real quick, of where we will be doing that at, how I kind of just say like what we need in our facility expanded. I think I could go in here a little bit more, but I said expand the food storage capacity to make sure we're able to accommodate for all this food that we're bringing in. Which now I want to say the proper shelving and stuff like that, which I'll add in here. Food resources, just kind of like where we're getting that from. We're going to need to make that direct connection. And then the transportation of those, we're going to be needing service trucks of some sort that we can go pick up cold foods as well as fresh produce. So Gilbert, I believe, will be talking more about that. And then, of course, the food handling and training. When it does come in, we do transport it to our services or our sites. How are we handling that food? And pretty much the qualifications somebody needs to handle that food. And then I kind of get into this right here to the neighboring homeless shelters and food pantries and other organizations with the high food demand, pretty much stating that, if we reach capacity, we don't want to contribute to food wastage ourselves. So how can we partner up with other organizations to send that out? Maybe, and that's kind of what I was thinking of. What do you guys think about this plan?
So should we perhaps review everyone's
I think
proposal and see how they might
overlap and
Okay. Yeah, that works with me. So if we just want to go down the list and
so I guess that's me. The outline delineates my scope within fundraising and PR, but I did as well focus a bit on the health department's expertise, which is broad, and considering it's like also a regulatory agency, it's going to have a lot of impact on the food recovery program. But before I did that, I thought it was important to develop a mission, vision, and value statement. And I know like there are like consultants who spend like weeks developing these statements, so they're pretty haphazard compared to that. But I thought just like as our like guiding principles of what we do and why we exist and how we do it. So I said our mission is the food recovery program's mission is to reduce the prevalence of food insecurity in people experiencing homelessness while reducing the community's food waste footprint. And the vision is the food recovery program represents a consortium of public and private stakeholders that collaborate on ensuring the community has a mechanism for food waste diversion through strategic community partnerships. And then values, which are hot button adjectives to use. So that could as well go in like the organizational structure that certainly doesn't belong in fundraising and PR, but it could be important to kind of open with that.
I like that. I do.
Thanks.
And then also, you already said it, I think I should put something in there about fundraising collaboration as well. So.
Okay. So now I'll start off with the purview of the health department, which I think in Colorado is Department of Public Health and Environment. I don't know if it's called the health department, but anyways, I'm calling it the health department here. So the health department already has an evidence-based orientation, training, and testing related to foodborne illness and food safety, as well as emergency preparedness. So I know that's going to overlap a lot with the folks whose scope was food preparation. But since the health department monitors compliance with those regulations, it seems like they'd be a great consultative partner to have to get the program running and make sure that it's up to code. So my proposal was to serve in a consultative role while providing education and licensure, and also formalize emergency response an emergency response team. Emergency response as in like when there's a cutoff in the food supply or something, and we need to go beyond the scope of providing food to people experiencing homelessness. Next is surveillance and evaluation, something the health department does very well. So there are pre-existing surveillance systems for disease outbreaks and health statistics. And I feel like they'd be well positioned as the department to implement and evaluate process and outcome measures related to the food recovery program. Because we know data is important when it comes to sustainable funding. Next is the health department's IT. So we have a robust database, and it can be adapted to fit the needs of particular programs. So we're going to need some sort of tracking of client demographics or food safety measures. So I figured that would be something we could leverage as well to for like the infrastructure of the food recovery program. And now to the professional network and institutional support. So the health department is, I guess, like every county has a health department, so they have like a reputable standing within the community among nonprofits, community-based organizations, and other governmental organizations. So that said, they'd also be well positioned to solicit recommendations from other agencies, because there are food recovery programs that I'm sure are up and running in other counties, so we could see best practices as well as goals and strategies. And that's a good mechanism to recruit partners as well. And then this is just minutia, but we have a big building, there's meeting rooms. If we want to use the space of the health department, we're welcome to do that for meetings. We can also establish a touchdown office where we can permanently house someone. I don't know if that's too into the weeds, but I felt like that was important to mention. So that was like the purview of the health department. Now to, and so I don't know if that's going to go in this particular section, because my what's designated here is PR and fundraising. So for PR, the department has these broad-based outreach channels that already exist. So social media, earned media, paid media, listservs. You know, they're an institution, so people know about them and they know how to get information from them. So we can kind of leverage the existing outreach infrastructure to nurture an outreach campaign to spread awareness about what we do. This is a good way to bring about new partnerships and community support. And I also felt like InReach would be very important too. So when I talk about InReach, I mean like educating nonprofits and other organizations and even employees within our organization about what we do, because they are often the boots on the ground and they do a good job of getting our message out. So I think about departments like human services or other food pantries who have similar missions. And then in terms of like media relations, the health department has a public relations officer, so I felt like that would be someone suitable to handle media requests, as well as work on advocacy and legislative affairs related to food policy. And last is fundraising, which as a term kind of confused me because I think of fundraising as like not something the health department does. So I kind of reframed it as resource development, which is grant writing. So grants galore for preventing food insecurity. So federal, state, and foundation-based grants. Can also be donation-based programs, so like partnering with retail food establishments. And then we also have accounting that happens within the department, so that could be something we could help with for the team. So that was a long way of saying we do a lot at the health department, and I'm happy to kind of like tailor this to maybe narrow the scope a little bit, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of overlap in what you guys have to say. So.
One thing that I really liked, Devin, that you had talked about was the IT. For whatever reason, I didn't even consider that as like any of this. But getting like demographics and all sorts of information would be super beneficial for those grant writing processes, because we'll be able to have that information to incorporate into those grant proposals. So I think that was a great thing to add in there.
Yeah, I agree. It's important to convey like the communities we serve, who they are. Yeah.
I think you did a good job covering everything there. Pretty much make sure the net is casted in all areas, so you can start a. Cool. Would we like to continue to move forward?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Okay, so I basically just talked about like the big picture of what the director of the homeless shelter does and how they're trying to basically connect the individuals with the program and best serve those individuals. So I thought that for what the director should do is find the most effective way to reach the individuals. So I wanted to do that by having them work pretty closely with the members and seeing what exactly is their needs and the best way to reach them and how to reach them. So I think that the individual should be interviewed by staff members and volunteers, and just figuring out what's the best line of communication between the two. And then to actually move through and make it come to action, I think that the volunteers should be recruited by having recommendations, applications, interviews, and then trial runs where they can shadow or follow a staff member and see exactly how it works and to see if they fit into it, just to make it feel as personable as possible. I think that it should be open to I want it to be open to recruitment as well as people who decide to come in on their own. And I think that managing them and making sure everything runs smoothly as a system, creating a sign-up system, setting reminders, whether it's text, call, emails for volunteer shifts. And then I think another important thing is implementing small monthly group meetings and one-on-ones. And from there, you can just see how the volunteers are doing and what is working and not working, and basically how the director can work to make their job easier and then more fulfilling in the long run.
Thank you, Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Selena, if you would like to walk us through your training protocol.
Sure. So I was a little, I want to say all over the place, because I did feel like the training of the volunteers overlapped a lot with like the safety protocol. But yeah, the first thing that I put on there was I highlighted the primary responsibility of developing a training protocol. And so I kind of put into words what that training protocol should include in terms of how to do proper food recovery. I specified that, you know, it's a training for volunteers so that they can check that the food meets safety standards. It ensures volunteers will have the capacity to assess all food products, verifies that volunteers take appropriate action to keep food that is unsatisfactory from being recovered. Thank you for that. I went ahead and added stuff about, I guess, logging volunteers logging when they pick up and drop off stuff. And I feel like that could be needed to like kind of feed into the data and our outcome measures. I also wanted to include a little bit about good hygienic practices and how this training should include teaching volunteers how to maintain good personal hygiene, but also keeping their vehicles clean where they're going to be transporting the food. And I put in a little bit there about like the spreading of diseases. And so I'm not sure if I should add more about that or if that falls into line more with the safety protocol from the food inspector. And then I did add something about, you know, when volunteers are sick, what the protocol for that would be. And then other responsibilities that I highlighted are just the collaborations that I'm going to have with the other members of our team. And so at the bottom there, it's coordinating with the transport coordinator and what exactly that means. And so I put meetings to assess the number of food recovery volunteers needed per each establishment. After that, coordinating with the food producer representative to efficiently track establishments of recovered food and ensure that enough volunteers are available. I also went ahead and put in a collaboration with the operations manager, mostly so that we can oversee training demands and the training budget. And then I also put in collaboration with the director to oversee volunteer attendance policies and incentives. I got a little bit ahead of myself here because I saw some of those questions that we have to answer after this. So I kind of just thought ahead and thought about what we might do to retain and keep our volunteers happy.
Any comment, guys?
There's I have just a little bit of overlap, but you'll see what I put when we get there and we can combine it afterwards. So mostly this is great.
Yeah, I figured we would have a lot of overlap, so I didn't know how much in depth to go to, but cool.
Well, I kind of left it because of our overlap. I kind of left my segment on that very small. So this is beautiful. Yeah. All cool. Fleshed.
Go ahead and take them from there, Cynda.
Well, I guess I'm next. All right. So let me present mine. Oh, are you just scrolling for us? Okay. As far as that goes, I put the training program requirements. There's two different sets of requirements as far as official training, and that would be for food handlers. Those are the volunteers. I just put that they should possess a current food handler certification. It's something that as a program we probably would want to fund, but you know, depending on how many of our volunteers are from the homeless shelter itself, as opposed to, you know, more Good Samaritans from outside the who might be able to handle it. It's like a $15 expense for a food handler certification, but I think that that certification is not required by code, but it gives a basic broad coverage of a lot of the things that you spelled out up above there. And so I think that I would recommend it to the program just so that everybody has a basic knowledge. And then the second bullet there is the person in charge. And so whoever the manager on duty is, on any given day, there is a person in charge, whether they're called a manager or not. And they need to possess a food protection manager certification or food manager certification. And that one is required by code. And I added in the bit about not having any critical violations on the inspection. If we have an inspection and there is a critical violation, then that person would not be the person in charge until the violation is remediated and re-inspected. We still might be able to be open and running the shelter, but we would need to have a different person in charge until that time. till we get everything cleaned up and re-inspected. And then I added in that we could do stand-up trainings or safety refreshers in things like hygiene, hand washing, sanitizing procedures, food temperatures, labeling, employee illness, all those kind of topics, and kind of rotate trainings on a monthly basis. Since they're volunteers, I'm sure not everybody will come every month, but or maybe we want to do them more often and do a weekly shorter session that we'll be able to hit more volunteers with, so that we're refreshing those topics all the time. Next, one of my responsibilities was food donation safety requirements. And so this is about safely receiving those donations. So I put that organizations that donate food must have the current passing food safety inspection without critical violations, that we would not want to accept donations from anybody who is having a violation. And so we would just wait until they remediate their issues before we would be able to take any more donations from them. That donations should be inspected on arrival at the facility. So the person receiving the donation should check the vehicle, that the foods should be delivered so that the ready-to-eat foods are separated from raw foods or toxic materials in the vehicle. The vehicle shouldn't have animals or ill people, signs of infestations, checking canned foods that they're not dented, swollen, or misshapen. And those kinds of things need to be separated immediately and kept away. I thought about putting in there that we would just refuse donations of those kinds of things, but I didn't know how you guys feel about that, but I think you can get in trouble if you're refusing things at the door from donations, as far as the people who bring it to you and how they feel about that. But we want to make sure that we keep them separated, and if we do accept them, to store them separately so that they're not contaminating any wholesome foods. For food transportation safety requirements, we just need to be able to use or make sure that temperature holding equipment is being used. So those may include insulated containers or refrigerated vehicles, depending on how long it takes to get that food to us. In Metro Denver, I think that it might not necessarily be that long, but who knows how far our reach will be. And then also that we should have a contingency plan in case of vehicle trouble. And we also could consider that the transportation might be the responsibility of the donor, but we'll have a lot more success acquiring donations if we have some transportation capabilities ourselves. For food safety guidelines for the program, I don't know. I mean, I found a resource of a food recovery program development project, and there were 22 pages of guidelines on food safety. The CDPHE manual for retail establishments is 182 pages long. So this definitely could have been much longer and much more thorough, but we only get 2 pages. So I tried to go with the basics, and this is where I cut out a lot of the things about serving food and focus just on the donation recovery program. And perhaps we want to spell out in our document that this is not a separate thing from the shelter, but that it is an independent organization within the shelter that is the recovery program. And then if there is a kitchen, they will have their own food safety standards that go with, if there's a kitchen, if there's food delivery, that not delivery, but if there's serving of food, that is run under separate safety standards and oversight. I don't know, because there's a lot more information that goes along with that. And I can get scrambling and start putting that stuff in here if we want to start cutting out some of the overlap that I have in here. But for minimum safety guidelines for the program, food must be stored 6 inches off the floor in its original packaging, or there's certain exceptions for that. The potentially hazardous foods must be stored below 41 or above 135. Frozen foods, I just put that we'll maintain them frozen until distribution, because there's lengthy protocols for if we thaw those frozen foods and how we do it. I didn't know if we would be accepting any deliveries of hot foods, but there's protocols for how to cool them down in a timely fashion to keep them safe. Then the ingredient labeling, everything in its original package would maintain its original label. And then if restaurants or stores are providing any prepared foods that they prepared themselves, then they need to be labeled, and we can definitely, if we have an ongoing relationship with a restaurant that gives us extra trays of food that haven't been served, then we can just get the recipes ahead of time and make our own labels, or they can send us labels, but that we have that information ready for distribution. And then, there's lengthy restrictions about, or advisement about date labeling all of the foods and disposal. And then I just put undercooked foods, mollusk and shellfish, and foods not processed to prevent pathogens will not be recovered. We're not taking any raw milk. I don't think we need to take rare meats that are already cooked. We just say, we would like either raw or fully cooked. For then sanitation protocols, some of this is covered in other people's as well. So there's hand washing and hygiene protocols. There's some specifications about ill volunteers that we've talked about in the trainings already. I think that, we'll just ask people at the beginning of their shift. We'll ask people not to come, but then we'll also double check ourselves by having whoever the person in charge checking in with individuals about whether they've been ill and whether they're fit to work. And then the volunteers will not touch ready-to-eat food with bare hands. So there's some glove protocols that we would have. Canned and dry storage foods need to be protected. Cross-contamination is prevented by keeping the raw things away from ready-to-eat things. And surfaces and dishes must be sanitized between changes in types of foods. The utensils, dishes, and surfaces should be washed, rinsed, and sanitized with specific sanitizer. And then I just sort of generally lump together that water, waste, toxic chemicals, and the building and facility itself will be maintained according to the code. And then the premises and the storage will be inspected and treated for infestations on a regular basis. And then that there needs to be disinfectant on hand and a protocol ready in case someone on the premises does vomit or have diarrhea on the premises. And there's a couple of references to the rules and regulations and the guidelines for food recovery programs. So I don't know how you guys feel about how general or how specific, or if we should cut out big chunks of mine and sort of just make sure that's covered in other people's. If you want me to scramble for trying to add in about serving.
Cynda, I think you did a great job encompassing everything, and it does hit what we had imagined. Because you're right, we are just this food recovery program giving these resources to the homeless shelter, and then on that part, their behalf, they'll have their own set protocols on how they'll manage to cook foods, things like that. So, but I think you did a great job of like how we're going to grab these resources, how we have to maintain them when we are distributing them, you know, what does that call for when we store them and how they have to be handled from there. And I think that covers all of our grounds.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cynda, this was very thorough. You know, you took time to make sure you cover everything from the pickup to the drop off. I think that's very important. So good job.
And I also really liked when you talked about the volunteers doing the monthly trainings and changing what they do. I think that was really good. So nice work.
As representatives of different agencies, it's probably prudent that we all go through licensure, because I learned something just reading this. So
yeah. Thank you, Cynda, that was awesome.
It was actually really fun to get my assignment because my daughter is currently going to CSU for environmental health, and she just got an internship this summer and is completing her training as a food safety inspector for Weld County. So it was really fun to work with her and share some of her experience.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right, so food donations.
Amanda, you muted.
Yep, I noticed that. Thanks, Gilbert. Okay, I feel like coming to the end of this, a lot of the same things have been hit, lots of overlapping, but I kind of did mine chronologically of how I thought things needed to happen. So like prior to even contacting donors as we're starting this up, we need to make sure that there's comprehensive safe food handling education and training, as many of you guys have already talked about, for both staff and the volunteers, including, to my understanding, we are not, if the food's gone bad or whatnot, we actually just don't accept it because we don't want to contaminate the rest of the food at any cost. So we just politely say no for that. And then along with that, there's the labels, the nutrition labels that come with them that we want to have on there, but then there's also labels when we go to pick up the food that says like we've checked it, it's not damaged, it's needs to be frozen, whatever it may be. And so there's labels that we could provide on those as well. And then making sure that the staff and volunteers know what temperatures need to be for all the food. And so some of the things to make sure that we stay on top of everything would be to set up self-inspections monthly for the transportation, for the pickup locations, and for the drop-off locations of the food, to make sure that we are maintaining quality throughout the process. Annually, our storage facility would need to have an inspection. Same with our transportation, and same, we should have annual employee training as well, just to make sure everybody stays up to date on everything. And one of the handouts that we were given, there was a Appendix D that gave like a thermometer weekly calibration log. And that just makes sure that those thermometers aren't off and that we're actually keeping correct temperatures of everything as we go. So I think those would be important things to stay on top of. After we do start to collect food from our donors, my job is to stay and maintain really good relationships with the donors, with transportation, and with our facility, obviously, and make sure that we meet expectations of everybody and discuss those expectations. make sure that I stay in constant communication to make sure that we don't get a surplus of food, to make sure that for transportation, it's on time, they have the right equipment for the quantity of food that we're going to be getting, or the type of food, whether it's hot or cold, that we'll need to transport. And then making sure that we have it organized so that we have enough space at our facility once the food gets there. For collection of goods, like I was talking about a little bit before, it's important that we examine and accept only the foods that have met the required criteria. And again, in the handout that we were given, there was a Appendix A that had like a little checklist that you could go through and make sure that they weren't spoiled and whatnot, make sure that they are packaged properly and labeled properly. And then there's a little label that we put on there that shows exactly where we got it from and exactly where it's going, so we can make sure that everything goes where it needs to go and is coming from approved places. Then for transportation, again, it's important that we stay in good communication to avoid misunderstandings of timing, locations, size of transportation, or type of equipment needed for the food, and to comply with all applicable requirements. Again, there's Appendix D. There is another little thing to look at, little log, just making sure that everything's kept in the correct location. So it's kind of, and I didn't put those on here because the appendices they would have made it like 4 pages long. And so I figured we could add them in. I could take that part out and just mention that we're going to have it, whatever we want.
I think it's good with reference to material that we were given for the assignment specifically. And then if we are a little short at the end on our page length, we can add them on.
So good job, Amanda.
Thanks, Gilbert.
So as the transport coordinator, I am coming in as the last person. So there is obviously going to be a lot of overlaps. I think that especially with the food safety inspector and the food handling and training manager, those 2 roles are very important in working with me as far as coordinating and making sure that the food that we pick up is safe, first of all, and it remains safe throughout the transportation process and until it gets to the homeless shelter. So I think that's my main role, to make sure that we get safe food, because we don't just want to provide food to the homeless, but we want to make sure that the food we provide is safe for consumption. That is our responsibility. So in order to make this a little easy, I divided this into 3 sections. The first one would be identifying our various donors. It's important that we know the different donors that we're going to be working with and the type of food items that they're going to be donating. And the second is going to be deciding the types of transportation equipment that will be needed to safely transport these food items while maintaining and preserving their quality, like I said. And in addition to that, we can also make sure we get volunteers and workers involved in the transportation. We'll make sure that they're well trained to be able to safely handle this food and avoid the contamination, cross-contamination. And the third point would be, I'm just going to briefly mention the 3 points and I'm going to come back and elaborate them. And the third, finally, once it gets to our facility, we've got to make sure that they're inspected and to make sure that they're still in good condition before we actually receive them. And if they're not in good condition, what do we do? How do we dispose of them and things like that? So if you can scroll down a little bit down, Juan, thank you. And also in terms of our storage. So once we get these food items to our homeless shelter, how are we going to store them? So what kind of equipment do we need? We need freezers, refrigerators, and so on and so forth to make sure that this food remains safe until they're actually consumed by the homeless. So those are the 3 things I will be touching on briefly. So if we can go back up to the first point, determining our various donors and the type of food that we will be receiving from them. I think if was mentioned that we can focus on markets, if we get markets that would, or farmers that would donate perishable food items, and local grocery stores for non-perishable and perishable food items, and also local bakeries and restaurants for ready-to-eat foods. So those are mainly the three food items that we'll be focusing on. So the types of transportation equipment we need, we know that for non-perishables like canned foods and things like that, that do not need to be refrigerated, we can get those in a van, non-refrigerated van, in order to cut costs. We can do that. And so we can, I think it's better for us to have like designated pickup days in order to be more efficient. We can have pickup days for similar types of food items. So if we're picking up non-perishables and we have the non-refrigerated van, we can use that maybe on like Mondays and Wednesdays. We can arrange with the grocery stores and the bakeries food items. And so we know that we're using one van for that purpose, and we're gonna cut down costs. And also for perishable food items, like we can go to the markets like on Saturdays and pick up just the perishable food items with refrigerated trucks, so that we know that that is gonna be good enough to be able to transport these particular food items. And so another thing that's important, as we all know, is why we're transporting the food items. How do we maintain the temperatures to make sure that these food items remain safe? Because they can leave the facility safe, but it doesn't mean that it's going to get to the homeless shelter still safe. So to make sure that this happens is we have to train this is when I work with the food safety inspector and also the food handling and training manager to make sure that we get personnel or volunteers that are well trained and understand the importance and the implications of temperature when handling food, and also would know how to handle food the best way to make sure that they don't contaminate the food while it's being transported. And finally, if we, the third option, once the food gets to the homeless shelter, this is when the food inspectors that was mentioned by the operations manager can come in. The food inspectors can make sure that the food is actually getting to the shelter in good condition as well. And if the food does not pass the test, if it's not in good condition, what do we do with the food? Are we sending it right back, or are we disposing of the food? What's the best thing to do? And also, we need to make sure that the approved food that is actually approved to be good once you get to the shelter, we're storing this food in the best condition possible in order to guarantee longer shelf life and quality. And this is where, like I said before, we're going to use refrigerators and freezers, temperature measuring devices, and food temperature holding equipment. And this was well covered by Cynda, our food safety inspector. So we're going to try to make sure we have this equipment that we need to maintain the quality of this food. And for the food that we don't use, let's say we get overwhelmed by donations and we are not able to consume the food or give out the food to distribute the food to the homeless in time, and some of the food is going to go bad and we don't want to keep it in our facilities. How do we coordinate to make sure that this food is sent to other shelters? So we can partner with other shelters that lack a food recovery program, like we do, to make sure that they either pick up the food from us, or we can drop off the food to them. So I think it's also important to have that set up. And finally, all through the process, I think we should always remember that we have the lives of people at stake. So it's important that we preserve the quality of the food that we're going to give to the people, because in trying to help people, we don't want to kill them, right? So, and to make sure that everything is working fine, I think it's important that we have routine maintenance of the equipment that we're going to be using. So our trucks, our containers, whatever equipment we're going to be using, the vehicles, make sure that everything is properly maintained. We have a routine maybe every 3 months or every 2 months to make sure that equipment is properly working. And especially since temperature is very important, get those temperatures checked to make sure that everything is well calibrated and good to go, like routinely. I think that's all I had.
I think that broke transportation down pretty well, getting from the facilities, our volunteers understanding their safety measurements, to getting to our facilities again. So going from the food source to our facilities in a safe manner, and then potentially distributing those out if we need to, if we are overstocked. So I think that was a really good encompassing plan there, or proposal. Okay, so I believe that's everybody's proposal. Just want to restate what the minimum qualifications for this operation manual is. It's a minimum 14 pages long, no longer than 16 pages. Single spaced, 1-inch margins, APA citations as necessary. So from there, how do you guys want to approach a game plan.
If we can just go back to the top, maybe, and just, I think we've all listened to each other. We know where we overlap, so we can try to minimize that a little bit.
So I think we should do a time check too. So we're like halfway through the max time allotted.
Right.
And we can make the plan on how to hash out the logistics proposal. But I'm getting the sense we won't have time to actually like formalize it together on this meeting.
So the guidelines for the assignment, we're pretty much on track with having done our introductions and then walking through our proposals. And then there's 15 minutes allotted for making a group game plan for how we're going to put them together to make the manual, or we can decide to create and submit it right now during the Zoom, and then we go longer than 15 minutes. But we could also kind of divide that up, you know, make a game plan and then work on it independently or in pairs or small groups kind of thing. Are you guys, I'm not as savvy with Zoom as Meet, so I know that you can break out into small groups in Zoom, and then come back to the whole group. Do any of you know how that works?
We could, or we could, I could stop sharing the screen, and this is a Google Doc that we could collaboratively just work together at the same time, which would probably be what we end up doing. I think the biggest thing would be, do we want to push to finish this right now and submit it at the end of this discussion?
I think so. I think we should.
Yes.
It's okay.
Right? And then if we did want to maybe real quick, I could go through each section and say, you know, should we add something here or just change a format? And that way we just know we can individually go into our section and change as needed, right? So that way we could kind of get this game plan. I could just go through as well and do a formatting. I know a lot of you guys have some bullets and stuff that when you copied over, maybe the bullets looked a little bit different. What do you guys say about that?
I think that's a good idea. I think we should maybe start with like giving the name of the shelter and then naming the manual, and then that way we can go through the sections and whoever, I guess the role of the person, if you have any questions or if you want any clarifications to do that, and then to make edits, because otherwise we just copy and paste it.
Yeah. Any thoughts for title for operations manual?
I think it's based on the name of our shelter.
Yeah, that's what I think too. So open arms, homeless shelter.
I think you nailed it, Juan. Do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Solid.
Mhm.
So our operations manual might say the Open Arms Food Recovery Program, or
Right.
manual.
Open Arms Food Recovery Operations Manual.
I like it. Okay.
Do we want to put in homeless shelter or just open arms facility or something like that?
So put. Yeah.
Homeless shelter is fine. No.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. From here, this is the acknowledgements page. I just kind of went through and added all of our job positions and kind of what is expected out of these job positions. I just gave acknowledgements towards the actual assignment itself and not personalized on the real world.
Looks good.
Okay. I'm going to take this off now. I know this is me. Oh no. Look back. Okay. Is there something you guys wanted me to add in this summary and introduction? I mean, I guess I didn't really read it to you guys.
I think it's like adequately addresses like high level what we
Okay.
do and why.
I did go with MLA formatting, and I'll change that here soon. And also those citations. Organizational structure. How did you want me to add something in here, Devin? Should I take your mission statement out of your section and put it maybe below this introduction?
Yeah.
I did like your mission statements. I'm not trying to take credit of yours.
That's fine, yeah. They don't really belong in my section anyway, so.
Well, I think that's why we take the names off of sections to,
Yeah.
you know, mush it up together. And
Absolutely. Did you like that right there? Is this good? Honestly, I could work on that afterwards. So what else do you think I should add in this? I know you mentioned about maybe sponsors and fundraising events. Should I add a little bullet on here?
I feel like that belongs more in the PR and fundraising section.
I wonder if your diagram about organizational structure shouldn't go right under the first organizational structure paragraph.
You want it
with it?
Okay, I could easily put that up here.
Yeah.
Is that what you want? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
That works.
Going with this.
So if I understand correctly, Juan is the operations manager. So this is like, we're all supporting Juan in the mission, right?
Yes. Yeah, I see it as that. I see it more as we're supporting each other. I don't like to be the guy on the spotlight. So,
Actually, I wonder if mission, vision, and values should go before organizational structure. Might be its own little.
Oh, like right, like up here before this introductory paragraph.
Right.
Like its own thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it would be emphasized in that manner.
Oh, you're the Kiwi.
That's funny working in this way. I was the pumpkin the other day. Okay. So how do you guys believe that is? I could go through and format.
I like.
Anything else I should add?
Oh, help.
References all to the bottom and make a reference page.
I wondered about that. I think
I
maybe.
did too.
Although I think my references are in APA format, so I don't know how weird that gets.
Oh, it doesn't get too weird. I was thinking it should go below the section that it was coming from. So that way there isn't a reference page and you got to go all the way down to the bottom. The references are below the section. It's usually can be appropriate. What do you think?
Sense?
Is it going to be bad if we put our references at the bottom at the end of the document rather than having it in the middle everywhere?
Yeah.
You want them all at the bottom?
I'm just thinking. I think it might be better. This is one document. We're putting it.
So I think my references probably apply to most of the document too.
Okay. I do have you guys heard of Mendeley?
No.
Mendeley is a resource for references. You store your references in this resource. You upload a Word plugin and you can download all your references and create a reference bibliography. It's very fast. If you guys want, I can easily go through your references, find those sources, and create the proper APA citation. And
I would say
put that at the bottom.
whatever is easiest for you. I don't know that a lot of us even have references. Like I know mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could easily track your references through here because you're right. There's not too many to go through, and I can easily do that, which is something we could do before we submit it at the end. Because I know APA, actually, yeah. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, okay? Is that okay? Or did you guys like sharing the screen?
Yeah, why don't you just continue to the end?
Okay, yeah, right. Huh? Jump in. Okay, organization structure. Do you guys think I should add anything there? Change those references. Fundraising and PR. Do you guys think we should add anything here?
So this is only supposed to be one page, and it is actually two when it's formatted correctly. It's but it kind of transferred over strangely. But I talk a lot about like the actual expertise of the health department, which is really not delineated in fundraising and PR. So if my only contribution for this component is fundraising and PR, then like this whole part is moot.
Well,
right. It's like good information that I wouldn't want to be out because I think it covers everything in a way. But
it's just like only asked of, like in my individual logistics proposal, maybe it's more relevant than in here because it really only asks fundraising and PR. So if we're thinking,
you know, for the sake of space, we can. How about you format it? Can we format it real quick to see if we could maybe keep it in there? Because it's still.
So why don't you go on to the next section and I'll format mine in a Word document and send it over to you. And that way we don't have to kind of.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Actually, I think because yours isn't the only one that like didn't format correctly. If we all want to take a moment and like try and format it real quick.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it would take that long for everyone.
Yeah, Devin, if you wanted to format it and we can still move on to the next section.
Sure.
And maybe look at that. So then volunteer and recruitment.
Really quick, hey Devin, I just reformatted mine. If you just highlight everything and then go up to the top and just add bullets and then kind of like delete your old bullets, it'll put in the proper bullets for this Google Word.
Oh, super. Okay.
I can also help you with that if you want me to just do it quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I see that.
No,
the raccoon's attacking the page.
Raccoon.
I'm a mapache. I'm a raccoon. How exciting. Sorry.
That's so funny. A hyena. That's funny.
I also, let's see. Juan, is this yours? Below the summary and introduction, the organizational structure, then we have establishment of, and then there's the food storage. And I think that will combine down below. And like food resources and transportation and handling and training, each of those sections kind of are going to get absorbed down below.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I didn't go into great detail in those perspectives, just more of a quick overview.
Right.
And just kind of wanted to like have a quick reference to see, okay, what does this consist of? And so I thought these were the main topics that we were trying to do: establish the team, okay, food, you know, and so that's why I did it in that sense. So I didn't go into detail in that.
It's almost like a table
synopsis.
of contents.
Yeah, table of contents, synopsis, yeah.
Or something. We might, if we leave them there, we may like reference the section down below where they're going to get expanded on or something.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we could do that. Such as page numbers. Yeah. Okay. Should we do that? Let's see. Okay. That's a good idea. And then for the volunteer and recruitment, do you guys believe this was put together appropriately? I think so. And do you guys think we should add anything in this section?
I think it's fine.
Is there any place that you want me to be more specific? Was I too specific? Or do you think it's okay?
I think one thing about volunteers that we can add would be transportation. How would you go about being a volunteer for transportation? That would be the only thing, because there would be a kind of requirement. You'd want to make sure these people that are volunteering, and if they want to volunteer for transportation, they have a clean background. So a background check would be mandatory to look at just traffic related offenses and things.
Should I just say background check just in general for the volunteers then? Or should I say background check maybe more specifically towards
transportation? Yeah, I would say roles in vehicle transportation.
Okay.
A background check required for vehicle transportation.
So I have a suggestion. I don't know what you guys think about, since this is going to be like a comprehensive document, I think instead of saying I will serve as the director, we can like put the name of the role. Like Jackie is the homeless, what is it, Jackie?
Oh, yeah, like right here.
The shelter director will serve as the, you know, something like that. We can go through and try to make sure we correct that, take out the I's.
Okay.
And like put the name of the role of the person. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good pickup. Okay. Other than that, I think that includes how we want our volunteers to come in and what they're able to do. Training protocol. I thought you did a good job, Selena.
Is there anything I should add or not add?
I think.
Go ahead, Cynda.
I'm sorry, I was still back on volunteers. Are we not supposed to be specifically recruiting volunteers from the shelter itself as patrons of the shelter?
That's not how I think it is. But
I thought I read that somewhere. Okay.
What'd you say, Gilbert? Sorry.
I was saying I think it's up to us. If it's, we can design our model. If you want to recruit from the homeless, it's up to us to do it. I don't think there are any guidelines to that.
I mean, I think it might make sense for if we're having the volunteers like give out the food, but I think it gets complicated in terms of like transportation. If we want to have someone who is from the shelter be a volunteer for transportation? Like, I feel like there's a lot more that would go into that in terms of like, well, do they have a license? And
Right. I think
Right.
if they meet
I
those
agree as well.
specific requirements, it would be sufficient, right? If they have a license, a clean background record, you know, it gives somebody an opportunity to help out on work and, you know, lift their morals. You know.
Right. I think it would support the mission of trying to help the patrons transition into the normal, into a more normal living arrangement, or back into community living.
But is it outside the scope of a food recovery program? You know, like it's a good idea, but should that be in this document?
Well, just
Right.
because that will recruit through recommendations, applications, interviews, it could say the program itself. But that's okay.
Okay. Okay. So wait. So are you saying you would like to add in that a bullet underneath volunteers will be recruited through also the shelter itself? Is that what you want?
Right.
Oh yeah, sure. I think yeah. I mean, whenever whoever volunteers, I think it'd be fine. You know. So
Right.
if you wanted to put it in there, I don't see how that would affect it.
I don't know.
Whoever,
Doesn't sound too popular of an idea.
Do you guys mind if we put that in there? And the volunteers will be recruited through, we can put in from their own establishment of open ops.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
it's just not solely, right?
No,
Right, not solely,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
almost like in an effort to give our community members an opportunity to work in that area.
Make
Right.
them feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
How about if we just say that? Open arms community.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
For the training protocol, Selena, one thing, practice, I like what Cynda had mentioned, and even though this is maybe overlapping, maybe we could put in here some kind of reoccurring training. Did you put that in here? Maintains volunteer schedules.
I put somewhere in there about having quarterly trainings, like leads quarterly volunteer trainings and provides additional trainings needed.
Okay, yeah, okay. I thought I did hear that. So that's good then. So it does show some recurring trainings. Transport emergencies.
I would say, let's see, training program. I mean, I think we can delete mine and most of it, and put, where did it go? I think that if we put their certification, I mean, how do you guys feel about requiring volunteers to get a food handler certification? Or at least the food handlers in the?
Well, I would say this, that we could have two ways to get certified. One, a funding source, right, through some kind of scholarship or grants that are given to us. Also, it wouldn't hurt to maybe, you know, even though it's $15, charge $25 for some kind of certification and use the difference to help support the food establishment, right? To take those $10 donations is what it would be considered and put it towards the food. Something like that.
The supervisor that has the certification that has to be there, and then there's other people that are helping out that don't need to have it. So we can minimize the cost, but still have somebody overseeing it that is certified.
Yeah, I just didn't know in the case of volunteers if they'll have any experience in food service whatsoever. So the person in charge is the only one that's required by code to have that certification. But I just thought maybe we just say that the volunteer food handlers will be offered a current food handler certification, and then that'll help to get maybe some of them to have that training, or will be offered that training if they don't have any food service experience or food handling experience or something like that.
I think that it would be good because you can always put somebody in there to grab cans, write labels on them, and put them away. But if there's going to be a reoccurring volunteer who needs to know, different ways of storing food and making sure the rules, I would believe that if they're going to be volunteers for a consistent amount of time, they will need certification. So that way we can put them into appropriate places to handle that food. So give them a time constraint more than 3 months of volunteering, such as one visit a month. Eventually they're going to need some kind of qualifications, right? If we want to put them into different areas to help us out. So
I think that's a good call out, Juan. That's practical.
So maybe
long-term
maybe have,
certification. Sorry.
go ahead.
Long-term food handlers, we should try to shoot for certification for the long-term ones.
Yeah, or if we call it like a level 1 and level 2 volunteer, so then we know that, we have level 2 volunteers that are just anybody off the street, and a level 1 volunteer has food handler certification, and a level, 321, and then the person in charge is the level 1, and they're actually somebody who would oversee the whole thing going on that day.
Oh, I like that a lot, because then that also gives a level, level 3 or level 2 has some kind of transportation qualifications, and that way that's our way of organizing how we know people are properly trained and can do their jobs.
And so then I would feel okay if we took my section, my little tiny training section, and sort of fitted into this top section of yours, where you have the develop the training protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And we could just put in those certifications and kind of where do you have the
Part that I'm highlighting?
Yep. Yeah. Well, the first, yeah.
That entire section, Cynda, or just portions of it?
Move the whole thing into the training protocol. That we could make this. Oh, look how tiny.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's some other font. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, so I think that covers training protocol.
And then, well, I was going to say my third bullet has these refreshers, and I think you already talked about that.
Yeah.
And so maybe we want to dissolve mine or incorporate it into yours.
Yeah, Selena, if you could incorporate that last bullet into where you set a quarterly routine or checkup, just so they're in maybe the same bullet, or combine those two sentences.
Which ones?
Let me see. Never mind. We could just delete that. I think you cover that right here, Selena. Ensure that verification activities are conducted frequently, such as daily, weekly, monthly, etc. It may include volunteer observations. Yeah. Viewing food. Actually, no. Maybe one bullet that says additional monthly training. Yeah. So you say we ensure verification of activities, but not necessarily that we are going to establish regular trainings. Which I just like that idea of making sure everybody's up to date, and it does give credibility to such organization to know that we're active and very involved.
And that's different than this one, than leading the quarterly volunteer trainings. We just want that more frequently.
Yeah, more frequently. Yeah.
Here's what I had. If any of that is helpful.
Yeah, you can just do that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Do you guys like that?
That looks good.
Yeah, I think it's,
Okay.
I think it's good.
Good job, guys. Now, safety protocol. I think you did a good job, Cynda. Very thorough as well.
Oh, where'd 3 go? Oh boy.
What's
That's
going on?
just gonna,
Okay, so safety protocol. I'm going to delete your name now. Cynda.
So we don't need any of this now, right?
right.
No.
Yeah. Delete it.
Okay, yeah.
Whoever was formatting it so that there's not these huge spaces, can you continue to do that for all the portions?
Yeah, it's a
What
lot of.
he's-
We'll probably do that at the end
Yeah.
before we submit.
I tend to be kind of like a formatting freak. I do not mind taking this at the end once we get our content in to put it into Word document, change up those citations to make sure they're APA formatted, and then we can submit it. Do you guys like that idea? I know we want to submit it now.
No, we probably not submit it now. If we can finish everything, just edit it.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah.
Because that would be like very tedious little thing. Content's there.
If you're the self-proclaimed formatting freak, you do it.
Yeah, I like to format. That's I got in here and I started that. Like that's why I was like, hey, Arial 12, different headings, so they stand out. But
Yeah.
Okay, food donations. Oh no. Yeah.
Okay.
So, did we remove what we needed to from safety protocol from Cynda section?
Well, from the first part, I think my section here about donations being inspected on arrival is a little bit redundant with some of the transportation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit as well, because
Oh, and food donation section also.
Yeah, I
I think all 3
talked
about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good redundancy though. That's where transportation overlaps with the safety.
Right.
You kind of want to you'd want more clarification in the safety section than in the transportation section.
Yeah, a little overlap, I think it's okay, because
Yeah.
it shows that we understand that our roles overlap, and it's good to mention just a little overlap. I think it's okay.
Okay. And then transportation, temperature holding. Oh, this I apparently didn't finish my thought on this sentence. Appropriate temperature holding goods for food products that require
Different temperatures.
must be used for potentially I was looking for the wording for potentially hazardous. Or what do they call it? PHF/TCS, temperature controlled. What is that? Let me find it.
Okay. If you don't mind, Cynda, while you look that up, we'll move to the next section, if everybody feels this is great. Okay, food donations.
So really quick, sorry, Juan, going back.
You're fine.
I feel like Cynda's section has been really good about giving us like hard statistics, like this is a health violation that can't be broken, blah, blah, blah. So she does a really good job with like definitely the last section, the second to last section, but then like maybe for the redundancy portion of it, like the first two kind of talk about exactly what we're going to be talking about in ours. Again, if we want to keep it because we want a little bit of repetition, that's fine. But it's like those two are more layman's term, just kind of like describing the general part of that, where the other parts are like very statistical facts or factual portions. And so if we want to somehow incorporate those two sections in the other section, I think it would help like that section kind of flow a little better.
Yeah. I'm not that at all. I know what you mean, because those were more protocols that I created based on the standards that are out there, but they're not like super specific based on standards. Whereas, you know, just deciding that we're not going to take food from people who are under health violations is more of a organizational decision. It's not written in the code anywhere kind of thing. Right. But throwing that in with your donation section would be totally appropriate. Sorry, not yours, but the next section. And so, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. I deleted my name.
But I think that would be totally appropriate, and like to pull that first one and then see what we need to do, if there's any part of the second one that we need.
I don't want to demolish your section either, though.
What's that?
I don't want to like completely demolish your section and just keep like ripping it apart and putting it other places.
Well, I just think there were so many pieces of it that overlap with yours. I think it's appropriate. I just didn't want to leave it out of my original proposal.
Yeah, okay.
And I think there's a few things in there that we could add into your pieces, and that's fine. That's what this is all about. I don't feel, you know, just sorting it out so it makes sense as you read, so that everything that goes together is together.
Okay.
Let's see, like for food donation, like I grabbed this whole section just to put it closer so that we can look at it together. Maybe. No.
So I do just kind of want to restate the time. It's 11:43. I want to say we have maybe 20 minutes left. And we want to go ahead and answer these questions still. And then any closing remarks. So just kind of making everybody aware of the time right now.
So should we loop into the sustainability and scalability questions, or do you think?
I think we only have one more. I think Amanda's almost looks good.
Yeah.
We can just amend it.
If we could just finish, just maybe. Sorry,
Amanda,
go ahead.
do you feel like starting with maybe actually this one would go here better in the relationships with the donating organizations.
Okay.
How do you go?
So Amanda and Cynda, you guys are combining some of your guys' sections together right now?
Yeah.
Right.
Make sure.
So I just
Okay.
put the having a passing food inspection under this good relationships with the food donating organizations section. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I go under the collection of goods part because I have the make sure that they appear, smell good, food's not spoiled, past safe dates to consume, or not past safe dates to consume, packaged properly, labeled properly.
Yeah.
I think it should go down there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's I'm just gonna dump the whole piece there that I for inspection. And then if there's any wording we want to use, we can, and I'll delete the rest.
I'm actually gonna move it up right here
Okay.
because I just had this, and I think that's just more in depth of what I said.
Okay. Well, we can pull these specific, like, you know, the vehicle, and put them here as bullets.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Oops, sorry.
I was thinking about bulleting those anyway. To make it more lined out.
Okay.
I'm gonna change this to, instead of just canned food, to packaged food, because it
Yes.
can be for anything.
Thank you.
One, just move on to the.
Yep. So for food transportations, because I think you guys are overlapping some of the how donations are with transportation, but do you guys like the food transportation section? Do you think Gilbert did a great job of encompassing everything that we should do? Is there anything we should add?
I think it's good for the most part, and I know it's going to overlap, but do we want to make sure that this section also includes any sort of like the logistics around if the volunteer is a transporting volunteer, like the certification or the background thing that they need, or did we already capture that in the other sections?
Oh, you mean in terms of like recruiting volunteers?
Yeah.
So
Specifically like transportation volunteers.
Right. So let's see. What about we can put it under the second section, says deciding the type of transportation equipment and also the volunteers and workers involved. And will it fall under there? I think it's the best place to put that somewhere.
Yep.
In there.
Okay. Does anybody want to add that? Gilbert or Selena?
Juan, can you, since you're on the side, I don't know where do you want to put it?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to read and see like the best place to put it, because I'm talking about the days for pickup and the types of items. And towards the bottom where it has, in addition, work with, probably there. But how do we word it?
You could probably put it like right before that sentence.
Okay.
Are you trying to figure out what to say or like where to put it?
Yeah. If we guys want to, for sake of time, let's go ahead and put in quotation or parentheses the statement you want to add, and then we can move to the sustainability questions and scalability. And then For the given sections, we can just finish adding up what we need to say.
Yeah,
so
just parentheses there. We can move on and probably come back in there. But
yeah, we could do that off of this meeting session. So if you in the quotations want to just remind yourself what you want to add.
okay.
I just pulled my food transportation segment and I was going to dump it somewhere in the food transportation section. So then we could work it in there, but it's a little bit shaped differently, not being more bulleted, but rather kind of paragraph story type. So do you care if I just dump it in there and we format it later?
I don't think you have to add it in there necessarily, since it's more like a sentence.
Yeah, because Cynda, I think you had the point of having what safety should look like for this entity. And since it stands in your safety section, it is fine to stay there because it should include transportation somehow. And then with Gilbert's section, having food transportation and what his workflow is going to look like, it needs to also mention safety and what that talks about. So I think it should overlap in that sense. So I don't necessarily think you need to drop it into his section. It's good to have it separated.
Yeah, Juan, if you want to move on to the questions.
Is that okay with you, Cynda?
Yeah, that's okay. It just seems like having it in my section, then there's also a piece in the food donation section of transportation of goods right before then the food transportation section. So it's a little redundant having it 3 times.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
I think we should take a pause, guys. I think we have to answer those questions within the 2 hours, and then we can stop recording after the 2 hours and finish editing to turn it in.
All right.
There we go. That sounds good. Okay, so do you guys all see your questions?
Yep. I want to just share them one. Do you mind?
Where did the funding for this coalition come from?
I think Devin hit on that with the grant funding.
Right. Primarily grant funding, which is going to come from a variety of locales, federal to foundation. And then I also mentioned like having some sort of program partnering with a community partner in which you like have a annual event to generate revenue. Those seem typically pretty lucrative for this type of program.
Yeah, I think the partnership with the existing food pantry and the shelter's initial organization will help provide some of that. Also, as much as there isn't extra resources in either of those organizations, is going to lighten some of their requirements. And so they may be able to divert some of what they're currently using to feed the shelter population, and whatever food pantry around will, be able to not be donating as much directly to us. And so maybe they'll be able to help us get off the ground as well.
Right.
Cool. Number 2, a day before the food recovery program is about to start running, a refrigerator at the homeless shelter breaks, decreasing the shelter's capacity to store fresh food by 25%. How will this affect us, and how will we respond?
Well, it'll affect us because we'll lose some of our products if we don't have enough space for them to be stored properly. If we don't collect food from donors and they have to waste them, they're going to be upset and wondering why they are even donating to us if we can't control it. I think
we waste our resource funding as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that it just decreases the amount of stuff that we can have on hand. So we'd have to accept fewer donations, but we maybe need to do more transportation runs so that we can restock each day on those fresh items that need to be kept cold. Do small things more often.
And while it wasn't framed in this document in detail, like this is part of our emergency readiness plan in case of electrical outages or what have you. We know what to do if a fridge breaks down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we
just to
put
add, David, just being prepared and having like extra refrigerators in case something breaks down. So that's something we should also think about.
Maybe not even just extra refrigerators, but service funding for a technician to come in and help us with that.
Right.
And also perhaps having in our relationships with food donating organizations that they may be able to store some food for us for short periods of time.
Like that.
Oh, I like that. I do like that. Kate?
A particular food source provides so much spinach to the food shelter this week that there's a surplus. How will this affect the coalition and how will they respond?
I think we did a good job of mentioning, like, if we have a surplus, we have neighboring partners in different entities, we can find a way to distribute those goods, right? So having that connection, and on top of it, it's not bad to have a spinach day or
two
day or something. Yeah.
Really, and there's certainly media outlets where we could put out the word that we're looking for people to come and take some.
I also added in mind that we could have something around volunteers being able to take home surplus food.
Mm.
Oh,
And
right. That'd be good.
Food pantries in general are typically short on fresh produce, so I'm sure there'd be neighboring organizations we could donate them to.
Mm-hmm. 4, 3 months into operating, volunteers consistently begin to fail to show up for their shifts. How will this affect the coalition and how will they respond?
I sort of addressed this in mine and said that we could have some sort of volunteer incentive program or like some sort of awards that we give them to just show how thankful we are for them and to maintain them.
Yeah, and that could probably come also down to the way we communicated as far as like setting up the shifts or the Excel sheet or however it was that we were having them sign up and keep going. So if they're starting to fail, maybe we can like figure out how exactly we can revamp that, our direct line of communication with the volunteers.
Or having people sign up for multiple shifts if they're available. Your first choice and your second choice, in case somebody doesn't show up, there should be another person.
Yeah, like different.
On-call volunteers.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, sorry, Juan.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I think you just mentioned about reminders through like text message or email or whatever, and I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
All right. I think another key point here would be to make sure we don't allow our own volunteers to exhaust themselves, where they are overworking themselves and feeling like there's no compensation, then they don't want to do this. And we can even set a minimum of how much they work, which makes them more eager to come into those shifts for future settings. So that way they're like, oh, I want to get my 10 hours this week. We know they're going to get their 10 hours, and that way we can evenly distribute time.
Maybe we should mention that, of course, it would be a very bad effect on the coalition if our volunteers fail to show up on a regular basis, of course.
Yeah. Would affect the whole flow of everything.
Right.
We need and love our volunteers. 5, anybody?
The public health coordinator moves away, takes all their materials with them, and doesn't respond to phone calls or emails. How will this affect the coalition and how will they respond?
Do we have their address? I'm just kidding.
We go hunt them down.
We could have proxies as sit-ins. So like if I ghost you guys, one of my colleagues will have been already pre-selected as a proxy, so nothing will be lost.
Yeah, and we should be in constant communication with each other. So if one portion of us leaves, people on either side of us should have that information. And so we just need to be organized so that we can share all of it.
Right. Working together as a team, you know.
Right. Even though
we have, I was just going to say that maybe we have like, in our school district, we have a Google Drive system and we have teams set up so that we all have access to these documents, but they're owned by the team so that when somebody leaves, their documents don't disappear and we all have access to those. So we could set up those kind of file systems.
Oh, absolutely, like a shared iCloud or cloud filing system. And also, I think we just as a entity hold everybody accountable, where we know pretty much what everybody's job role is, and we have some kind of understanding. Which Devin said, it easily helps us be a liaison for that time being, for that job role.
Okay, so number 6, the county is so impressed with the coalition that they ask your coalition to expand the program to the other 2 homeless shelters in the county and offers to provide you with $1,000 a year. How will this affect the coalition and how would they respond? I think it's a good thing. So if we if we're doing so well and they decide to help us expand our program, I think we will be able to reach more homeless people and feed more hungry people. I think that's a good thing.
I think it's a great thing, but I also think we need to make sure that we don't exhaust our resources and exhaust our time and effort so that everything falls apart. So I think we just have to find that balance.
Mm-hmm. I do like that.
Yeah, making sure that there's staff for those separate organizations. You know, that if we're going to be developing these other facilities, then we're not also the staff on hand at each one of all 3 of them.
Absolutely. We would have to have some kind of game plan of knowing that when we reach capacity in our 1 homeless shelter, and we are now starting to try to relocate food sourcing, that's a good time to, you know, combine with other homeless shelters to make sure we can do the same thing. So you don't want to move too fast. You're right. I like that.
Number 7, the next town over wants to adapt your program to their town. This town has a large Hispanic population who speaks Spanish as their primary language. What are the initial steps your coalition will take to help them start a food coalition in their town?
It'd be great to invite them over to volunteer and kind of see the steps that we have to go through, help them. We might, depending on our resources, be able to help provide them with our knowledge and whatnot so that they can kind of get their program up and running, but then also be there as a resource throughout their program if they have questions and whatnot.
I really like that idea of inviting them to come train with us rather than us spreading ourselves thin and like going there and helping them set up there too.
Right. I think that offering to share our operations manual with them, you know, whether we translate it or allow them to translate it and you know, make it their own for their own project.
But knowing as well that no 2 communities are the same and that they're like may have a different needs assessment, to that kind of directs how they actually operationalize their program.
Yeah.
Devin, you want to take this last one?
You decide to take your coalition's model statewide and land a massive grant from Warren Buffett. What do you need to consider and anticipate when expanding the food recovery statewide?
I think getting more equipment and more volunteers and just, you know, they'll be able to handle, because obviously we're going to get the grant, and so we should be able to get more equipment so we can do more, I guess.
I think transportation would be a big thing too, because trying to get outreach to those smaller, harder to reach locations is going to be harder to get the cold food or the warm food or whatever it may be out to those locations. So being aware of that. But then also a positive of it is if we have a surplus of spinach, we can make sure that one location doesn't have all the spinach, and we can spread it out so that we don't have a bunch of surplus in one area, and we can kind of communicate statewide to spread it out.
Yeah.
I think we also have to revisit it. Oh, go ahead.
But we can have more paid staff instead of volunteers if we really want to like institutionalize what we do.
I was going to say probably the first step is to try and replace ourselves on the local level so that we can be overseeing and developing the staff and the program in new places. You know, being able to institute staff in our positions now so that we can move on and expand.
I also think that we would need to have a game plan of time and expectancy. So not necessarily would we go and pop up, you know,
go into 10 different homeless shelters at one time, but maybe focus on one at a time, 6 months to a year at a time, to make sure they're established, well trained, on board, and then move to the next one. So something like a 5-year game plan, we could end up having, 5 community health centers or homeless shelters established, and so that way they are growing.
All
So,
right. Awesome.
cool, guys. Thank you for that. Any closing remarks? Let's see here, what else we have to do. Next steps, I think we are planning on go ahead and taking some time to finish up this writing document, the operations manual, review that. Anything you guys want to add before we go ahead and stop recording this?
I think we did a good job.
I guess,
Yeah.
Really well, and
I think we did a good job, and I think that our redundancies are really a positive thing, and that, making sure they get well enmeshed into one coherent document is our project right now, but that coming in with those redundancies was beautiful. That means that everybody really did all the parts of what they should so that we overlap appropriately.
Also knowing that this is a living document.
And then I guess we want to make sure that our document gets submitted in our video as well.
right. I think I'm in charge of submitting the document, and then Juan is going to submit the video. So
Yes.
but the document is still open. If you want to go back and do anything to it, it says submit within 48 hours. So if you want to go back and just read through, that would be awesome. Probably give it till tomorrow, and then maybe tomorrow by noon, or maybe, So if anybody has to do anything, I would look through it again with Juan, and I encourage everybody else to do that. And then if everything looks good, I'll probably send a group a message, and then looks good, and then I'll submit it.
Okay.
Great.
And I will also submit this video as soon as I get it uploaded. So this will be done by the end of today. So just ending remarks. Good job, guys. Thanks for working very close with each other and being considerate of everybody's opinions and thoughts. So
yeah, thanks for driving, Juan. Good job.
Yeah, if you want to stop the recording, I would be willing to continue to work with anybody who wants to flesh out that final transportation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will